He had denied the black baby at birth, but when he saw her again, this time wearing a judge's robe, he nearly collapsed. The first words she spoke to him in court were sharp and direct. "Mr. Carson, are you prepared to proceed? You ever think you can outrun your past, only to find it waiting for you, right where you least expect?" He answered, "Yeah, that happened." Harrison Carson's footsteps echoed across the polished marble floor of the Richmond County Courthouse, each step a statement of his confidence. Dressed in a custom suit and gleaming shoes, he carried himself as the air of a man who had spent decades dominating rivals and sealing deals. At 58, he was a partner at Carson and Associates, both revered and feared. This morning, he was walking into the biggest case of his career, a class action lawsuit against West Pharmaceuticals that could earn his firm millions and cement his legacy. Everything was supposed to be perfect. "You all set, Sharon?" he asked without slowing as his young associate hurried to keep pace. "Yes, Mr. Carson. Witnesses are confirmed. All documents prepared. Just one thing. The judge was switched last minute." Harrison stopped dead, his gaze sharp enough to intimidate junior attorneys for years. "Who's on the bench?" "Judge Ruth Thompson," Sharon said. For a moment, Harrison's face went slack. He fought to push the memories down. "No problem," he lied, but this was the kind of problem that could change everything. He entered the courtroom, always early, always in control. But today, as his eyes landed on the empty bench, an unfamiliar dread crept in. In his mind, he was 29 again, a bright future ahead, a few reckless decisions behind him. One of those choices was Magda Thompson, a brilliant and stunning black law student interning at his father's firm. She had told him she was pregnant. He denied being the father, using his family's influence to discredit her and erase her claims, protecting his name. He had never met the child, convincing himself he'd done what was necessary. Then the bailiff called the court to order, and the side door swung open. Harrison recognized her instantly. Judge Ruth Thompson, young but commanding, not even 30. Her features a perfect mosaic of her parents. His mother's cheekbones and jaw, her mother's deep brown skin and sharp, perceptive eyes. She took her seat, her black robes brushing the floor, all business. "Good morning. We're here for preliminary motions in Westridge Pharmaceuticals v. Collins et al." Her eyes swept the courtroom, cool and unreadable as they landed on Harrison, no flicker of recognition. Why would there be? He'd been a ghost, a rumor, never a father. She turned to him. "Mr. Carson, are you prepared to proceed with your motions today?" Just like that, the man who had built his career on never being surprised in court was cornered by a secret he thought buried for good. "Yes, Your Honor," Harrison replied, voice steady but hands clammy. He knew her story. Well, Magda had raised Ruth alone, put herself through law school while juggling jobs and refusing charity. Ruth had excelled, graduated top of her class at Howard, then Harvard, fast-tracked as a public defender before landing on the Benshaw Rising Star list, celebrated for breaking barriers. But Harrison also knew Ruth had just emerged from a bruising. Judicial controversy, accusations of bias, a high-profile reversal, the kind of scandal that makes a judge wary, careful, and determined to prove herself above reproach. And now, by some cruel twist of fate, she was sitting in judgment of the man who had denied her existence. He rose to argue the first motion, dismissal on statute of limitations, and Judge Thompson pounced. "Interesting approach, Mr. Carson. Are you suggesting ongoing harm can be time-barred?" Her tone was even, but there was a challenge in it, maybe the echo of an unspoken grudge. "The court will review your motion," she said. "But in my courtroom, technical maneuvers don't outweigh justice." The words stung. Was it judicial philosophy, or did she know? Harrison didn't have time to find out. The day pressed on, but his mind was stuck on one question. What he didn't know was that just yesterday, Judge Thompson had received an envelope containing photos, letters, and a DNA test. For the first time, she was learning her father hadn't died before. She was born, as Magda had told her. He had just walked away. Court adjourned. As Harrison packed up, Judge Thompson's voice cut through his thoughts. "Mr. Carson, a word, please." His heart hammered as he approached the bench. "I'd like a meeting in chambers tomorrow, 8 Mars sharp." "Of course, Your Honor," he said, poker face locked, but inside, panic roiled. That night, in his corner office, Harrison poured bourbon and stared at a faded photo of Magda he'd kept all these years. Not as insurance, as he'd claimed, but because he'd never been able to let go. His investigator called. Judge Thompson had taken personal leave recently, visited a storage unit, and ordered a DNA test. Something was shifting, and Harrison knew whatever had been hidden was about to come into the light. The next morning, in her chambers, Judge Thompson wasted no time. Mr. Carson, I've received information suggesting a personal connection, a potential conflict of interest. I'm not aware of any such connection, Your Honor. She slid a manila envelope across the desk. DNA results. You are my biological father. The words hit him like a punch. Harrison tried to deny it, but the evidence was undeniable, and she wasn't playing games. I should recuse myself, she said, but that would raise questions I'm not ready to answer. What do you want? He asked. To understand, she replied, her composure slipping. Why did you abandon us? Why did you deny me? Ruth asked, her voice trembling but fierce. Before Harrison could answer, her clerk burst in with an urgent motion for recusal, claiming Judge Thompson was biased because her husband had died from a West Pharmaceuticals product. That's a lie. I've never been married, Ruth said, her hands shaking. The evidence was forged. Harrison realized immediately that someone else was playing a deeper game, trying to force her off the case. Moments later, he received a text from an unknown number. We know about your daughter. Choose wisely in court, or everyone else will know too. Blackmail, plain and simple. Harrison showed Ruth the message, and now they were reluctant allies, fighting not just for their reputations, but for the truth. That day in court, as rumors swirled in news blogs and vague stories about an undisclosed connection spread, Harrison received another email demanding he introduce a modified expert report that would sabotage his own case, or their secret would be exposed. For the first time in his career, Harrison considered doing something unethical, but looking at Ruth, he saw she wasn't just a secret or a risk. She was his daughter. When called to present, Harrison stood before the courtroom. Your Honor, before I proceed, I must bring a matter to the court's attention. I have been pressured to present falsified evidence. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Judge Thompson immediately called a recess. In chambers, the whole conspiracy unraveled. Anonymous threats traced to Peter West, CEO of Westridge Pharmaceuticals, with inside help from Rodney Carson, Harrison's own brother. Their hidden family ties and the DNA results made front-page news in the Richmond Daily News. Ruth's career was threatened, Harrison's legacy scorched, and the real story, the one Westridge fought to bury, came to light. Internal emails revealed the company had knowingly marketed a drug that killed black patients, covered up the evidence, and decided profits outweighed lives lost in minority communities. Judge Thompson, shaken but resolute, called in the U.S. attorney. Harrison finally chose integrity over self-preservation. He withdrew as counsel for Westridge, turned over the blackmail evidence, and stood with his daughter as the scandal exploded in public. Peter West was arrested in court, but tried one last time to smear Magda's name. Ruth stood her ground, refusing to let old lies define her or her mother. Days later, news broke that West had died in his jail cell, likely suicide, and more. Files leaked proving Westridge had deliberately targeted black communities, valuing their lives less in the pursuit of profit. Through it all, Harrison and Ruth were forced together, not by choice, but by the consequences of choices made decades earlier. The next morning, in Ruth's chambers, Harrison tried to explain. I chose my career over my responsibility to you and your mother. I told myself you'd do better without me. I was wrong. Ruth listened stone-faced until her anger finally gave way to sadness. I thought I'd hate you when we finally talked, she said quietly. But I just feel sad. Sad for my mom. Sad for me. Even sad for you. She looked at him. You didn't ask for forgiveness. Only a chance to know her, to somehow make amends. I can't promise much, but I'm willing to find out if that's possible. Not for you, for me, for my mother. Outside the courthouse, as Harrison faced the press, Ruth stood beside him. Not as a judge, not as opposing counsel, but as a daughter, acknowledging the complicated truth of their bond. 29 years ago, I made the worst mistake of my life, Harrison said into the cameras. Today, I'm taking the first step toward making it right. Some wounds don't heal in a day. As father and daughter took their first uncertain steps toward reconciliation, the world watched and had finally heard the whole story. So tell me, what would you have done in Harrison's place? In Ruth's, when does justice end and redemption begin? Comment below. Share your thoughts on right and wrong and whether a community can ever truly move on from the sins of its leaders.